My mom was hooked up to an oxygen tank barely strong enough to walk. I'd worked double shifts for months so she could finally travel in comfort in the first-class seat I'd bought for her. But before the plane even took off, a woman in a blinding pink floral blouse stormed up the aisle and screamed that my mom didn't deserve that seat. Yeah, that's how this flight started. I'm 30, and I thought I'd seen enough chaos in life to stay calm in any situation. Turns out I was wrong. Because nothing prepares you for watching your sick mother, stage 3 lung cancer, pale as paper shaking, being yelled at by a stranger over a seat she paid for. 6 months earlier, my mom had been through hell, chemo, hair loss, pain so bad she'd cry in her sleep. The only thing keeping her going was a promise meeting her first grandchild. My sister had just had a baby out in California, and Mom said she wanted to hold that little boy at least once in her life. Her doctor finally cleared her for travel, but the trip was long. She needed comfort space rest. So I sold my gaming setup, took food delivery shifts, and saved every dollar until I could afford to upgrade her and Dad to first class. The day of the flight, she looked so fragile at the airport. Every few steps she had to stop to catch her breath. People stared, some with sympathy, some with that quick, awkward glance they give when they don't know what to say. Dad carried her bag. I pushed her oxygen tank. By the time we reached the gate, she was exhausted but smiling, excited. For a moment I thought everything was going to be okay. Boarding started. The agent called for first class and passengers needing assistance. Dad helped Mom up and I followed, carrying their stuff. Inside, the flight attendant, a woman named Maria, with the warmest smile, immediately came to help. She fixed Mom's blanket, offered a pillow, adjusted the air vent above her seat. "You let me know if you need anything, sweetheart," she said, squeezing Mom's hand. Mom smiled back, whispering, "Thank you, baby," as she settled into seat 2A. I kissed her forehead, told Dad I'd check on them later, and started heading to my seat in row 28. That's when I heard it. That sharp, screeching voice you can recognize even if you've never met the person. "Excuse me? Excuse me." That's my seat. I turned around and there she was. A woman in her mid-50s, platinum blonde bob so stiff it could survive a hurricane, floral blouse so loud it could break sound barriers. Her name, though I didn't know it yet, was Brenda, and she was pointing her finger right at my mom like my mom had stolen something. The flight attendant calmly said, "Ma'am, seat 2A belongs to this passenger." Brenda barked back, "I don't care what your computer says. I paid good money for this flight and I have a bad back. I need a first-class seat. She can move to economy." My dad's head snapped up. I saw the muscle in his jaw tighten. He's an ex-Marine, spent 20 years keeping calm under pressure, but I've seen that look 3 times in my life. Every time someone ended up regretting what came next. Before he could speak, my mom, God bless her, whispered, "It's okay. I can move if it helps." And my dad said quietly, firmly, "No, Sarah, sit down. You're not moving." Brenda blinked like she couldn't believe anyone would dare tell her no. "Do you know who I am?" she snapped. "My husband's a frequent flyer. We always get upgrades. I'm not sitting back there like some—" Maria stepped forward. "Ma'am, please return to your assigned seat so we can prepare for takeoff." "I will not." "This is discrimination," Brenda yelled, and half the cabin turned to stare. You could feel the energy shift, the collective "oh God, here we go" of 100 passengers bracing for a storm. Maria didn't flinch. She pulled out her radio and said calmly, "I need a gate supervisor at seat 2A. Passenger refusing to comply with seating assignments. Brenda smirked like she'd won, like someone was going to march down that aisle and drag my mom out of her seat. The supervisor arrived, a middle-aged woman named Patricia, who looked like she'd wrestled a dozen Karens before lunch. She listened for about 30 seconds, checked the boarding passes, then said flatly, "Ma'am, your seat is 28D in economy. You can sit there or exit the plane." Brenda's mouth opened and closed like a fish. "But my back." "Then you should have bought a first-class ticket," Patricia said, voice sharp enough to slice steel. "You have 60 seconds before I call security." The entire first-class cabin went silent. Then a man in 3C muttered, "Lady, sit down already." Someone in row 2 snorted, trying not to laugh. Brenda finally stomped back toward the rear, her husband trailing behind her, looking like he'd rather jump out of the plane. I exhaled, thinking it was over. It wasn't, not even close. During boarding, Brenda came back. Once, twice, 4 times. Each time she stopped near my mom, just stood there glaring. The first time Maria asked her politely to return to her seat. The second she raised her voice. The third time the pilot announced over the PA, "Ladies and gentlemen, we cannot depart until all passengers are seated." You could hear groans ripple through the cabin. "Sit down, Karen," someone yelled from the back, and the economy section erupted in laughter. But Brenda wasn't done. The fourth time she leaned over and said loud enough for half the plane to hear, "You know people like you are what's wrong with this country, acting helpless to get what you don't deserve. I bet that oxygen tank is fake." I froze. From my seat in row 28 I could see the whole thing. My mom staring at her lap, shoulders trembling. My dad's hand tightening around the armrest. And I felt helpless, angry, but stuck. The distance between us might as well have been a wall. I'd worked so hard to give her this one peaceful trip, and now I'd just made her a target. For a second I actually wondered if I'd done the wrong thing, if maybe I should have just let her sit in economy, quiet and visible, safe. Then Dad stood up. He didn't shout. He didn't curse. He just turned 6 feet tall and solid and said low and steady, "My wife has stage 3 cancer. She just finished her 6th round of chemo. She weighs 98 pounds because she can't keep food down. We're flying to meet our first grandchild, and it might be the last trip she ever takes. Now you're going to walk back to your seat, sit down and shut your mouth. And you should thank whatever God you believe in that I'm a patient man. Because if you speak to her again, patience is off the table." You could have heard a pin drop. Brenda's face cycled through shades of red, then white. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Then her husband appeared, grabbed her arm, and whispered something that made her finally move. The whole cabin erupted in applause. Real applause. The kind that comes from relief and rage all at once. Maria looked at Dad, smiling softly. "Thank you, sir," she said, then turned back to help Mom adjust her blanket again. The rest of the flight was peaceful almost. About an hour in, Maria came by and said quietly, "We've had complaints from passengers in economy. Apparently the woman in 28D is standing up and ranting about how first-class people are privileged snobs." She winked. "The captain's about to make an announcement. 5 minutes later, ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We've received multiple complaints about a disruptive passenger. Federal aviation law prohibits interference with crew duties. The passenger in question is receiving one final warning: remain seated and quiet, or law enforcement will meet the aircraft upon arrival. Enjoy the rest of your flight." I swear you could feel the satisfaction roll through the cabin. Brenda didn't move for the rest of the flight. Not a sound. When we landed, 2 uniformed officers were waiting at the gate. They walked straight to row 28. I didn't see what happened, but I heard it, her voice rising, the officers speaking calmly, and finally silence. Turns out she wasn't arrested, just formally warned and flagged in the system. As we stood waiting for luggage, her husband Gerald approached us. Alone. He looked worn down, like years of her chaos had chipped away at him. "I'm so sorry," he said to my mom. "She wasn't always like this." Then to my dad, "What you said up there, that was the first time anyone's ever stood up to her. You were right." He handed Dad a business card. "If your family ever needs flights, hotels, anything, call me. I own a travel company. It's the least I can do." Then he walked away. Weeks later, my sister told me that Brenda went on Facebook claiming she was harassed by entitled passengers. She posted 15 times about it. Every single post got flooded with comments calling her out. Someone who'd been on the flight shared the real story. Within days, her own friends were unfriending her. The posts went viral in travel groups. Eventually, she deleted her entire account. Mom never mentioned Brenda again. She only talked about Maria, the kind flight attendant who treated her like a human being, about the strangers who clapped when Dad spoke, about that feeling of dignity she thought she'd lost forever. 3 months later, her cancer went into remission. Doctors called it a miracle. I think part of that miracle came from that flight, from seeing kindness win in real time. She'd fought so many invisible battles, but that day, she didn't have to fight alone. And as for Brenda, well, a friend told me she's been banned from 2 more airlines since then. Some people never change. That flight taught me something I'll never forget. You don't have to be loud to be strong. You don't have to be cruel to be right. Real strength is quiet. It stands its ground, protects what matters, and lets entitled people destroy themselves. Because here's the truth, Karens think they're the main characters in everyone's story. but really they're just background noise.